And I want to ask you, maybe, where have the hiccups come when it comes to East African music in the US? And when I say East, I also mean Central African and South African and all these other genres outside Afrobeat. Where did the hiccups hit us? Because we seem to be ahead, especially in East Africa, Kenya specifically. We seem to be ahead, in the game in the early to mid 2000s. We had so many different Kenyan acts, touring back to back. Sometimes you would even have different artists here at the same time in different cities. But at some point, we kind of stalled as we watched our brothers, deservedly in the West rise to very high levels. Where did we in the East, where did we drop the ball, or maybe where did we miss the boat?
Thank you so much. Dre's actually answered this question earlier, where he spoke about the idea of some people not wanting to play their part. We have in the industry, we have DJs, we have festival producers, we have companies that should actually be committed to financing this kind of tours, and then we have influencers who have platforms like yours, who should do exactly what you're doing now. We have people like DJ Sani and people like Ida, people like Suga Shambi, who know the value of creating a voice for our artists and our culture here in the diaspora. So when we come together, when we unite, I think that's what's missing. Now, I want to refer to the West African artists because that's what I think they have that we don't have. For example, I've worked with a lot of West African artists who have also headlined Madaraka. But before Madaraka, like 8 months before Madaraka, they travel by themselves and their managers to Seattle. And they meet with me, they buy all the meals, and they just say, we want to learn about Madaraka. They don't even say we want to perform at Madaraka. They value relationships, But Kenyan artists, Ugandan artists, Tanzanian artists don't do that, So I think that's a big difference, Now
let's pause there. Let's pause there because I want us to, drill down on this. Is there a reason why they don't do it? Because, if they know this is what's needed to be done to get successful, is there maybe a reason that we're overlooking as to why they're not doing it?
I think for me, number one, ego and stardom. Like I was saying, everybody wants to be like these people. So when you want to tell someone who is worshipped, that look, you actually need to disguise yourself and just come and meet people, travel at your own cost and invest in relationships. Don't do a show, just do a reconnaissance, like a trip where you're connecting with venues, you're connecting with promoters, you're connecting with studios, you're building a tour schedule for yourself so that you know that every August I'm in Seattle, every September I'm in Vancouver, every December I am in Toronto. I know Ghanaian artists personally who have a schedule like that, and whenever you don't have them in the lineup, they're not mad at you. They call you, they tell you, I know you're doing the festival, you're doing a good job, I'll come, and they come and they show up. When they come, they want to do anything, So I just feel that what is missing is relationships, the value of relationships, I remember I was saying earlier that I was raised by a second wife in a polygamist marriage. I remember real preachers. I grew up around real preachers, preachers who are working on food, preaching, they were spending nights in our store, like a store that we had in our house. And they were always building relationships with their congregation and showing up when people are in need. And they did that all over the country. You find that these preachers are still respected today. When I go to certain places around Kenya, I'll use the names of people who died long time ago, and I'll get accommodation, I'll get food. That's how West African artists, For example, the children of Fela Kuti, when they come to Seattle, they look for keyboard players that played with their dad, you know. So they're not coming to new places. You have to build relationships, you have to build bridges. And I'm telling you, there are few artists in Kenya who are doing that. And many people might not know, but I think Sauti Sol are really good at that. You know, Sauti Sol have been to Kisumu in Manyata, where we do this work with One Vibe Africa. They've eaten in the ghetto, in corners where nobody will know that they come to. So I think Sauti Sol are a good example of that. You know, I'll just stop there, but I want to say that when we look at Kenya, Sauti Sol are a good example of that. But I think Dres has something to add here.
Let me also say, because I think I want to piggyback what Simon is saying. It sounds like a very similar conversation to what we have in Southern Africa. We're having this conversation. Why are our artists not connecting? It's also about lifting one another up, right? When you have this fight amongst yourselves to be the first one to make it out, or I want to be the one to blow up, right? Or then you stop working together. When you look at Nigeria, they all help each other out. Even here, I live in LA right now, and the biggest Afrobeat clubs, even the Amapiano clubs, are all run by Nigerians, right? And they all work together. And the top Nigerian guys in Seattle are now working with the Nigerian guys here in LA. And so they're building a network where they all work together and they support one another. They play each other's music. They help each other. It can't always be about numbers. It can't always be, let's say one Kenyan artist reaches out to another and the first guy has 500,000 followers and the other guy has 20,000. Well, the first guy doesn't want to work with the second because he doesn't have as many numbers as him. It shouldn't be about that. It should be, do you like the music, right? If the music is good and it's about the culture and the art, then that's how you're going to level up universally. In hip hop, we had this thing way back in the day where it was the East Coast and the West Coast in America, but then Atlanta blew up. And we're now living in the time where Atlanta is huge. Well, how did Atlanta blow up? They blew up the same way Nigeria is blowing up. Atlanta blew up because T.I., who was a platinum rapper, would do a verse with somebody who wasn't even huge. And we were like, man, how did T.I. do that? Because they had this thing that they called Southern hospitality, and they worked together. I think what Simon is saying, there's a level of hospitality and relationship building that they do with each other and with others that allows them to recognize that there's enough room at the table for everybody.